Welcome to Module 2 of our course. In our last module, we explored structural and operational theories that help explain how institutions function. Now we'll turn our attention to something more nuanced, but equally essential: organizational culture. Edgar Schein, one of the most influential speakers in this field, argues that culture is the cornerstone of organizational excellence, and that leadership's primary task is to create and manage culture. In higher education, this task comes with unique challenges. Colleges and universities are complex, value-driven organizations where culture is often deeply embedded and slow to change. Schein's interest in culture began when he noticed that two organizations might look identical on the surface, similar policies, similar structures, but have vastly different levels of effectiveness and employee satisfaction. The difference he found often came down to culture. Some parts visible, some parts hidden beneath the surface. In my work with various colleges and universities, especially around student affairs and the idea of students integrating into the culture of the institution, I've seen firsthand how culture plays out in tone, leadership style, and even in the motivations behind decisions that we make. To ground our exploration, we'll start by defining what we mean by culture. That is especially important in higher ed, where multiple subcultures, histories, and values are often at play simultaneously. We'll lean heavily on Schein's definition. Culture is a pattern of shared basic assumptions that a group learns as it solves problems. Assumptions that become ingrained and are passed on to new members as the way to think, feel, and act in that given culture. We'll also engage the work of Bergquist and Pollack, who identify 6 distinct cultural types commonly found in higher education institutions. As with Manning's framework of organizational structures, we'll focus particularly on predominant types, those that most shape institutional life. 2 of the most common cultural forms are the collegial and managerial cultures. Managerial cultures emphasize efficiency, hierarchy, and measurable outcomes. Collegial cultures, in contrast, revolve around shared governance, academic freedom, and the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake. Other cultures include developmental, focused on personal and professional growth, advocacy, rooted in democratic values and collective action, like faculty organizing in response to systemic changes; virtual, emerging in response to digital transformation, emphasizing collaboration across traditional boundaries; tangible, steeped in institutional heritage, traditions, and values, often seen in selective, faith-based, or long-standing institutions. Understanding these types helps us see how culture manifests differently across institutions, and even within the same one. Just as we saw last week with organizational structures, culture interacts with theory in important ways. Manning reminds us that understanding systems alone isn't enough. We must also understand how individuals make meaning, how they relate to each other, and how they interpret the work they do. Structural frameworks like the collogium, for example, connect naturally to cultural models like collegiality, where shared governance is not just policy, it's a lived value. Similarly, newer models like the virtual culture reflect shifts toward more flexible, decentralized, and networked ways of working, aligning closely with feminist and postmodern perspectives in organizational theory. Your main assignment in Module 1 asked you to analyze an institutional setting and compare official representations, like mission statements or web language, with the reality on the ground. Often, discrepancies in that alignment point to cultural dynamics. To deepen our understanding, we turn again to Schein, who conceptualizes culture as an iceberg. Above the surface are visible artifacts, logos, language, rituals. Below the surface lie shared philosophies, group norms, and deeper still, core assumptions that shape how people interpret and respond to their environment. These deep layers are harder to access, but they're often where the most influence resides. Meaningful cultural insight, especially if you're leading change, requires contextual knowledge. Strategies that work in one institution may fail in another because of differences in deeply held beliefs and values. This kind of nuanced understanding typically comes through ethnographic research, interviews, observation, and immersion. While this course won't take us that deep, it will help you begin asking the right questions. As you prepare for this module's assignments, and especially your final integration project, know that I'll be looking for your ability to engage with both surface level and deeper cultural dynamics. One scholar whose work is especially helpful here is Bill Tierney at USC. His research on higher ed culture explores how it shapes operations, decisions, and institutional change. If this area interests you at all, I recommend diving into his work. One of Tierney's cautions is worth repeating. Not everything is a matter of culture, but you also can't understand an institution without attending to culture. In corporate settings, some believe culture can be engineered from the top down, but in higher ed, culture is more organic. Everyone contributes to shaping it. That said, leaders do have a unique opportunity. Through rituals, symbols, and consistent messaging, they can influence the broader narrative, the institutional script, so to speak. As you complete your presentation for this module, keep in mind that culture is often invisible until its intention. What I'm looking for in your cultural analysis is an exploration of competing or complementary cultural dynamics in the three areas you've selected from the Berquist text. Your interviewee should provide insight not just into your chosen initiative, but also into the cultural forces at play and how leadership has to navigate, bridge, or balance these forces to move an initiative forward. You'll also be reviewing and commenting on the presentations of two of your classmates. All expectations are laid out clearly in the syllabus, but if you have questions, please feel free to ask. I'm looking forward to seeing how you apply these concepts. Thanks, and enjoy exploring the fascinating world of institutional culture.